And interestingly enough, some of those pros, like even if you talk about the violence against women, now me being a woman, I'm all for that. But me being a Black woman, I can see how that is not even technically specifically for me. Because even with that being passed, we know who they were really trying to protect, because we know who was the inception of the feminist movement, who started that movement and came and got Black women to add numbers for them, but weren't really fighting for us. So even some of the pros are not even specifically, they weren't specifically for us, because as a Black woman, I'm still not protected. If something happens to me, they still don't care.
Welcome back, 5011 fam. Hey, D.
Hey.
Yes, how are you doing, love?
I'm good. This makes me feel rejuvenated when we get to do this after work. I love it.
Yes, me too. It's so like refreshing and therapeutic, but it's also like we're both artists, so it's a form of expression, so that's always cool. So for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, or those of you who are coming back, we call you guys the 5011 fam. So welcome back to the 5011 Chronicles. This is Jay and D here. And yes, we're here with another set of hot takes. But we're here to discuss everything from politics to pop culture. We represent 5011 voices, we detail 5011 experiences, and we have and continue 5011 conversations. So thank you guys so much for tuning in for the first time, and just supporting us. And here we are. Yes, this is another episode. I'm so excited. Our topic this week, sometimes we have like lighthearted conversations, which are like really great and fun. And I think it's a break from everything that's going on, especially with the pandemic and everything politically and just the world right now.
Definitely.
Quick side note, we don't know exactly when this episode's going to air, but another tropical storm just came through, and I think it was like the 7th or the 8th this year to hit like Louisiana. Like Louisiana is going to hit really hard.
Yeah.
And even here in Alabama, like we've had so many trees out. It's like day 5 for some houses. Like we're the only house in our neighborhood with power right now. And it's crazy. Like we're thankful that we do have power, but I mean, there's a whole neighborhood. There's a couple blocks in our neighborhood, no power. And it's just really sad, like to know that there are people who, I mean, like with kids, there's whole households, like families that just don't have, power right now. And I hate it for those whose heat and like hot water is controlled by electricity, because they don't even have hot water. So that's like, luckily for us, when our power was out, because our power was out for 2 days. So when our power was out, luckily we have like gas heaters. Like, we kept the house warm. But
we had a blackout here in Atlanta too. Luckily now where we are, the parts of it got hit. We personally didn't lose power. I actually slept through it. But there was, when I walked outside, it was like trees and debris and branches. And I'm like, oh my God, what happened?
So I'll tell you.
But we were in a blackout. People are still now just getting power.
Just getting their power. My dad got his power today, and that's like day 5. But like I'm a light sleeper, as you know. So I woke up at like 1:30 in the morning. We have a pretty sturdy house. Our house is like old, like my house is like pretty sturdy. Like it's good bones. Oh, good old bones, like
good old Southern home.
Good old Southern home, just real, like the brick and the stone, and it's just real good and solid. But the storm woke me up because it felt like it was shaking the house. We had 3 trees go down. We had 3 trees go down on our property. So it's just, I mean, it's mind blowing, but I said that to kind of set the tone for the conversation that we're having tonight, because of course we love having lighthearted conversations and those fun conversations. But this one is one that it's particularly serious and thought provoking, in my opinion. I think for both of us, we've had this conversation a ton off the camera, but I think it's great to really bring this conversation forward here to the platforms. So we're going to get this thing started, and to give you guys, for those of you with a good old Southern Christian background and you need a good old theme, we're going to give you a quick theme. And the words that came together for us with this were, we lost our will to fight to our desire to be seen. as we've said before in other episodes, we're both 90s babies, and we are
Mm-hmm.
heavily influenced by 90s culture, both pop culture, TV and film and music. And, a conversation we've had multiple times is about the fact that 90s TV, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, crazy legendary. There are so
Very
many
that.
amazing things,
Very
so
that.
many amazing shows to come out in the 90s for us. I mean, like, you look at it, and the 80s kicked off like and the reason it's important to even set the stage on this is because, like, with 90s TV, if you look at where we were before this
Mm-hmm.
influx of
Yep.
Black media, all we had, in the 70s, we had like the Jeffersons, Good Times, Sanford and
And
Son,
a whole lot of blaxploitation movies.
a whole lot of blaxploitation movies. We had like the kickoff to some amazing music. I mean, Jackson 5 was
Absolutely.
popping and bopping, like, we had so many good things in so many realms as far as pop culture. Then you get to the
The
80s
birth of
and
hip hop.
the birth of come on now, birth of hip hop, and even like the kind of transformation and inception of R&B.
Yes.
That's going on in the 70s and 80s. And so we get to the 80s and Cosby Show comes out, and this is like paramount to actually seeing a different idea of what the Black nuclear family can look like.
Right.
So we got the Huxtables kind of changing the idea of what family looks like for Black people, and even exposing white people to another idea, or non-Black people to another idea of what we could be.
Absolutely.
But even if you look at that, I mean, that's 4 amazing shows, but that's 4 over 2 decades.
Hello.
So, we're talking 20 years with 4 shows really representing us. And there's so many, like, that's why we're the 5011 Chronicles, is there's so many types of Black people and so many types of Black experiences and families that it's important that we're seeing. So then the 90s come around, and here we are, like, crazy amount of, like, okay, give me like 3 of your favorite 90s Black sitcoms, TV shows. Like, what were your faves?
Well, obviously, I'm gonna say Martin first.
Of course, I knew Martin was gonna be
my favorite,
one
of my favorite shows of all time to this day. Let's see, what else was I? Dang, now I'm sitting here like, what was I super into? Because now I'm trying to remember, because I get the 90s sometimes in like the early 2000s. Can you
early 2000s
with the dates? But Martin
we'll
was
call
definitely...
it out, and I'll tell you if it was in the 90s or not.
Okay, Martin was definitely one that I watched a lot of. In the House, we used to watch In the House.
Okay, yes,
and
In the House.
Parenthood, I remember Parenthood was good too.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So I don't remember watching In the House or Parenthood. I probably have seen them, but I don't remember watching them. So for me, 90s Black TV, of course, the Cosby Show was still on, so I was watching Cosby Show. Which, now we've already had a whole discussion on that. If you don't know what we're talking about, tune into the other podcast, tune into another episode. You'll see, and you'll know exactly what we're talking about. But for me, Fresh Prince, like...
Oh yeah, Fresh Prince.
Yes, Fresh Prince was everything for me. And my brother and I, even still to this day, we've probably got it's probably a 15-year-old running inside joke with the episode featuring Queen Latifah, where she's like Hillary's boss. And she keeps saying Hillary's name wrong the whole episode. And there's this one part where she's like, "You're working a fine line, Helena." By far. That still kills me.
And didn't Will take her to a basketball game or something like that?
It was so much craziness in that episode. Like, it was so good. Like, I love Fresh Prince, and I love Martin also. And for me, it was, of course, there was like Moesha, the Parkers. There were some really good shows. The Parkers, I actually think might have been the early 2000s, but it was a spinoff of Moesha. So, Countess Vaughn's character, what is
Kim? And listen,
Kim, she was on Moesha.
People, when Moesha got put on Netflix, a lot of people was talking about how problematic it was, but the Parkers, y'all was talking about Moesha fat shaming. The Parkers.
Come on now, though. Like, the Parkers, the whole plot was fat shaming. And there was some ageism going on because Nikki she was an older college student.
And the professor was such a cornball. Like, girl, do better.
do better for yourself. But also, sister. which I think
yeah.
was another, like, that was a great show to come out in the 90s, because you've got biracial twins, and it's a
Adopted
story
twins
of
at that.
adopted biracial twins being separated at birth and
Mhm.
finding each other in high school, and that whole journey. And it was a great show. I mean, it had a great cast. It was a good show.
Very.
But you know, like we said, we lost our desire, or we lost our will to fight, because there were so many other things going on politically that we missed out on. And even that we might have allowed ourselves to not fully see what was going on. So I know one thing that we were talking about is the fact that right at the beginning of the 90s, there was the Civil Rights Act of 1990.
Absolutely.
And this was going to be paramount to making it easier for litigants, people who had faced any form of racial or sexual discrimination in their jobs, in the workplace, or in any form. It would make it easier for them to actually win those suits against those people who had perpetrated against them. And it was vetoed.
Too. And Bush was like, no, ma'am.
Right. It passed. Like, I mean, got through Congress.
Bush said, no, ma'am, not doing it.
Absolutely not. No, thank you. No, ma'am, no ham, no turkey. Like,
the first Bush.
The first, HW. So that was HW Bush. He did that. And what was crazy is the Senate, they were trying to find a way to still, like, hey, let's see if we can still overturn his veto, because that is how the checks and balances works.
Yeah.
And they lost by 1 vote for a 2/3 majority of the Senate. And it's crazy because, you know, our people have always had the ability, especially when it came to our rights, to, when we unified, we would mobilize, we would act, and we would get things done. And this is something that we should have been behind when it first came across the slate, when it first came up for debate or for vote.
Absolutely.
This should have been something that we were clued in on. And even if we probably were clued in on, but we should have been acting in a whole different sense to be the force behind something like this. Like, I don't know, that blows my mind. Because, I mean, luckily, a form of it still passed in 91.
Right.
But, I mean, think about kicking
how much
off
did
a decade.
That really... I mean, it has, but I mean...
It passed, but...
You know, they always find a way. they always...
That's the thing. And I mean, like, and I feel like what was the repercussion of the 91 was, and it's the big elephant in the room of the 90s when it comes to legislation, when it comes to any type of law that comes forward and affects Black people. And that was the 94 crime bill.
Ooh.
Like, right? Isn't it just hot when it comes off the tongue? They don't even feel right. Like, so,
I mean, too, Bill Clinton was like Black people's savior in the 90s. Like,
savior.
He was invited to the cookout.
First Black president.
He was invited to the cookout. And it was like our generation, I guess our generation started doing their Googles or something, because we was like, hold
Hang
the press.
Somebody
gotta, hold on a second. And he had to come back and apologize, like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad, didn't mean it, sorry. Because when Hillary was in there, she was getting all the flack from that.
She was getting all of it. Like, she had been in charge and making the decisions. And I think what's crazy about it is I don't even really consider that apology absolutely sincere, because she was campaigning for president. Like, you knew you had to say something for her to have a fighting chance.
And you knew it was wrong. So why wait till now?
You knew it was wrong.
I hate when people wait until they're pressed about it to apologize, because I never feel like those apologies are sincere. I never do. You mean to tell me all this time went by? We all grew up. We all grew up. It's 20 years later now. We're all grown and voting now. Now you realize, oh, hold on, that probably wasn't the best idea.
That might have been bad. Like, that might have had a negative impact. But and before we get too deep into discussing the effects of the bill, because one thing I did want to do is talk about the pros. Okay. Because there were some good things that actually came out of the bill. So, first of all, this was one of the largest, actually, it was the largest crime bill ever written in U.S. Constitution history. Like, ever written. The longest, 356 pages. It detailed so many things. And there were some good things to come out of it. And so, of those, there were the Violence Against Women Act, which I think, which now has been going through a lot, with 45, trying to repeal that and get that out of the books, so to speak. But, a lot of what people know about the 94 crime bill is mass incarceration, but there were also, like sex offender status. That was something that came from the 94 crime bill. Murders on civil rights activists, that became something that was more seriously investigated and charged. And any violent acts of terrorism, those came in the 94 crime bill. So those are, I would say, some pros, because those are things that we didn't actually have any legislation to approach.
Because, so knowing like what we know about politics now and things like that, do you think, this is just me playing Bill Clinton's devil's advocate,
of course,
throwing out a theory, like it could have happened. So do you think, because a lot of times it's hard for Democrats to get certain quote unquote liberal bills passed for things like that, do you think that the whole like funding police and prisons and stuff, I think they added like 100,000 police officers and all that, do you think that was like a compromise in order to get the other stuff in there? Or do you feel like they were kind of playing politics so that Republicans could have something and then everybody else? Do you think it's that, or do you think they just didn't care?
I think, to be honest, I believe that it was just all part of the original plan. Like, I think that when they had the idea of, one, attacking crime, this war on crime that they wanted to have in the 90s.
That piggybacked off the quote unquote war on drugs that they was putting on the streets. The drugs y'all gave us.
Because right. Like, because there's some more we're going to talk about when it comes to mass incarceration in a minute. But when it comes to the addition of like the police and the addition of, I think it was like, and I've got the number written down, it was $9.7 billion in prison funding. It was $6.1 billion in preventative programs, crime prevention programs. And those were going to be led by police officers and those who worked in law enforcement. So I think that was the original agenda. That and the laws that came forth that were going to disparately affect, or that were going to have that negative impact on communities of color. So I think it was originally part of the plan. Because if we even look back in 94, like if we look in the 90s, we as a people, just as Americans, yes, we had conservative and we had Democrats and Republicans, and it was not so much conservative and liberal, but we were a more conservative people in the 90s. I mean, just point blank, our country was a more conservative country in the time. So I see that just having been part of the original plan. Like,
and interestingly enough, some of those pros, like even if you talk about the violence against women, now me being a woman, I'm all for that. But me being a Black woman, I can see how that is not even technically specifically for me. Because even with that being passed, we know who they were really trying to protect, because we know who was the inception of the feminist movement, who started that movement and came and got Black women to add numbers for them, but weren't really fighting for us. So even some of the pros are not even specifically, they weren't specifically for us, because as a Black woman, I'm still not protected. If something happens to me, they still don't care. You know what I mean?
Right.
So,
you're absolutely right. No, that's absolutely.
Look at Breonna Taylor, violence against women.
Sandra Bland, violence against women. Absolutely. I completely agree. There's so many. And I think now that was what we consider, or what society could see as some pros, we'll say. Right. Now let's get into the meat of the 94 crime bill, because this is something that I think if our people had truly understood what the language in this bill was doing, because there were so many Black politicians, like from mayors to anyone who was representing the people. There were so many Black leaders that were in support of this crime bill. Yes. So I think the number one thing that people would probably be most familiar with is the 3-strike rule. And so the 3-strike rule, for those of you who are unaware, have maybe been under a rock, or maybe you're Gen Z. It's okay. Because I feel like the rest of us know. Right. But for the 3-strike rule, this consisted of imposed mandatory life sentences for any individual who had committed 2 previous felonies. And so it had to be 2 felonies, and
no matter what they were,
no matter what they were, they could have been nonviolent, but they had to be 2 previous felonies. And the third crime that you commit is what you would get a mandatory imposed life sentence.
Right.
And the thing about that is, I guess at face value, maybe in the 90s, I mean, I can't rationalize that now. I couldn't rationalize it then. I really couldn't see someone rationalize it then. But maybe they're thinking, "Ooh, this will be a deterrence to crime. People won't do this. People will not commit crime if they know that, ooh, you know, I got one more strike and I'm done for." But I just don't see how this could be affecting any other community other than white. I mean, other than Black or Latinx communities. I don't see any other community that could be affected by a law or a specific addendum in the law or moment in the law that is the 3-strike rule.
I think that rule was specifically created to specifically target African Americans, because we also have to keep in mind the war on drugs was a specific target for Black people. It was put in our community. Most of the people who were being arrested and going to jail for drug crimes or having a little bit of weed on them and stuff like that was our people. They were in our neighborhoods. So who's going to be getting arrested 3 times in a row? We are. They're not in their own neighborhoods patrolling that hard for them to be getting. They're getting slaps on the wrist, or talk to your parents, take you on home. We never got that. We don't get that. You know what I'm saying? We were the ones living in impoverished neighborhoods. We didn't have lawyers to get us off. We didn't have parents to pay off stuff and get us out on bail and all this, that, and the third. It was specifically for us. I feel like it was intentional. And I feel like it was a way for them to say it without saying it, because the war on drugs didn't work, because they were getting wrapped up in it. Police were getting wrapped up in it. It was a lot going on that they couldn't control.
They weren't able to control it. That's what it was. They lost control.
So what did they say? 3-strike rule. We can get them on that.
3-strike rule.
Arrest them 3 times. They'll be all right.
And there's a myth I do want to kind of help dismantle a little bit, because many people say, oh, well, the 94 crime bill is the reason for mass incarceration. I want to let you guys know there's a source where you can go and read online that it is not. And let me explain why. Mass incarceration had started before the 90s. So there was an increase. But mass incarceration of our people, of Black people, and of Black people was before the 90s. That war on drugs was the beginning. It was actually before then, because if we go back, and if those of you who've seen 13th, Ava DuVernay's documentary on Netflix, there's a moment right after the 13th Amendment. There was this creation of these laws where Black men were being arrested for loitering. If you got caught standing still anywhere, you were arrested. And in the specific language of the 13th Amendment, I need everybody to understand this. In this language of the 13th Amendment, it says that it essentially abolishes slavery, and I'm paraphrasing. It abolishes slavery unless you have committed a crime, which then you become the property of the government.
Come on, somebody.
So please go and read that 13th Amendment and know your rights, because once you have been arrested, and once you are put and booked and put in prison and you become incarcerated, you have become a slave of the government. And you need to understand that is the language. By law, you are a slave. They'll call you a prisoner, they'll call you a convict, they'll call you the felon, they'll call you whatever, but you're a slave, and you need to understand that. That should be the biggest deterrence to committing a crime, or to being caught committing a crime. But I just think it just blows my mind that for so long, because even now, what is it? There are 28 states that still have this law. Most states have reformed this law that has been, because in the years following, like let me not knock my cup over. In the years following this crime bill, I mean, there was an increase not only in the number of people of color who were arrested,
right,
and who were put in for life sentences, but there was another thing in this crime bill that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. So there were more crimes. There were 60 new federal offenses that were punishable by death.
mm-hmm.
And this is something that's important to understand because, yes, there were a lot of violent crimes that needed to be on that list of things that could possibly be punishable by death in states and by those who that's what they subscribe to.
Mm-hmm.
But there were non-violent crimes and crimes like drug crimes that were on this list of crimes that could have people sentenced to death.
Mm-hmm.
And that blows my mind. Like,
it doesn't even blow mine because consistently every time
you're right,
we get a little something, or we get a bill passed, or some gets done, all of us, like they did, like even with desegregating the schools, like they like, okay, we'll desegregate the schools, but even now still in the South, because I'd never experienced this till I moved to the South, you have to go to the school in your district. Mm-hmm. That is just another form of segregation. They like, okay, you can come to our schools. Well, you got to afford to live in our neighborhood to do it.
You got to. Mm-hmm.
Like, so I feel like it doesn't even shock me.
That's not in your district. Yeah, if you want to go to a school that's not in your district, you have to pay more to go to that school.
You either got to pay more, or you got to pass a test and prove to me that you're smart enough to come to school
prove that
with
you're
us.
smart enough to be in this school. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's ridiculous. Our education system is so screwed and so flawed. But you're absolutely right. And I shouldn't be surprised. Like, it really shouldn't. I think it bothers me more than anything.
Yeah.
Because until I found that out, I was unaware. And when you know something, you know something. Like,
and once
it really sits with
that
you
blinder come off, ignorance really is bliss.
It really is bliss because knowledge sits with you, and you can't escape the knowledge that you come across.
Nope.
So another important another important clause of this 94 crime bill affected our youth specifically. So these were young Black men and women who were growing up in the 90s that were affected by this, and it levied harsh new penalties for the justice involved youth. So for those who were already in the system, there were these harsher penalties, and in particular, there was one that allowed 13-year-olds to be charged as adults.
And it's like, in what world is a 13-year-old an adult? In what world? And to be quite honest, if a 13-year-old is really committing them type of crimes, they don't need jail. They need help. Okay,
they need help.
Let's be very clear. They need rehabilitation. They need help. They don't need to be in jail. They don't need to be treated like a prisoner. They need help.
Because clearly the ball has been dropped somewhere.
Exactly.
And when you've got a 13-year-old that's troubled enough that they're committing crimes, whether they're serious or not, you've got a 13-year-old committing crimes. That's something that we need, like, as a community, there should be something done about that. Not charging them and locking them up. Like,
that's also a specific target, because how many white 13-year-olds was corner boys? How many, you know what I mean? How many of them had to go out and do certain things to take care of their family? How many of them needed to join gangs for protection? Tell me. You know what I'm saying? That was
absolutely. It was a very specific. The justice involved youth. That just blows my mind. That's how it's worded. But it just, I don't know. When you go back and you look at the things that have come across about the 94 crime bill in particular right now, because we've got Biden and Kamala Harris, who are both, on the Democratic ticket, the presidential and vice presidential nominee respectively. And they both, Biden wrote this. That's the first thing that everyone needs to be aware of. He drafted this bill. This was his bill. And Kamala Harris was Attorney General in California. And during the time that she was in California, there was an increase in arrests. But I think we've also got to look at the big picture in that, because, now I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit. Because I hear a lot of the negative things said about Kamala Harris. And one, I realize that it just seems that there's so many more negative things said about her than there are about Joe Biden in relation to the same law. Whereas I do want people to realize he drafted the law and she did her job. I do want to make that connection. I also
Which
want to
I
say
also
that
want to
although,
make a comment about the whole job
yes,
thing too. I'll let you finish. I just want to, when you're ready to
okay.
segue, I definitely want to talk
Yes,
about that.
yes. Okay. Because like, yeah, okay, so she was doing her, and I also feel because she is a non-white woman, there's
Hmm.
always going to be it's always going to be wrong. Whether she had done the job differently
Hmm.
and had gone against the bill, oh, here's this rebel negress showing out.
Hmm.
And then, she did, and even if you look at, because I think some people look at just the 94 crime bill in her tenure as attorney general, but there were some
I mean,
pretty
that's a big
interesting
part
things.
though. I ain't gonna
It
lie.
is a big part. It is a big part. But if you look at kind of what she ran on and what a
Hmm.
big chunk of her work was,
Hmm.
specific to the youth in California, it's pretty interesting to see how she held parents accountable for truants, because
Hmm.
I think that was really important. She had the laws and the things that she put in place, or that she enforced, because that's what she was doing, was enforcing.
Right.
It had a dramatic impact on the number of kids who were going to school. So I would say there was some good out of her tenure as attorney
Hmm.
general. But please, I want to hear what you're going to say about her job. Oh, yes, I want to hear
Okay, so about the
it.
whole doing her job thing, I just wanted to kind of, because for me, this is a part of the whole what occurred in the 90s and the good and bad of it. A lot of, like you brought up earlier, we had a lot of Black representatives in office
Hmm.
in the 90s. It was kind of a influx of that for us, which was a positive thing for us. But a lot of those same people, when they
Hmm.
got in those positions, keeping that position became more important. And so for me, it kind of became like they were willing to kind of pander to the other side so that they could keep
Hmm.
theirs, like I didn't got
There's,
here, so
yeah.
now I got to stay where I'm at. I don't want to, cause no ruckus. I don't want to toe the
Hmm.
line. I don't want to ruffle no feathers. So I'm gonna just go along with what they going with, but I'm gonna just be the face of the Black people, but I ain't gonna really do nothing. I'm gonna just go with what they
Yeah.
going with. But I'm the
Yeah.
face though, because they got a Black, they gotta have a
Because
Black one in there.
they got a
You
black
gotta
face.
have
Yeah.
a Black face. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
And I think for us in the 90s, that was kind of, and even if you look at like W.E.B. Du Bois, like some people felt a way about him feeling like you got to play the game to win the game, and feeling
Hmm.
like you need to get in those positions to change things. But then you get
Right.
people who get in those positions and they don't really change things. They
They
just
don't
go
change anything.
along and they're just
Right.
that
They
face.
become a part of the system. They become a part of that
Yeah.
system. And I would honestly have to say I'd have to do a little more research on specifically what she did as attorney general.
Right.
Um,
And I'm not
to
just
be
speaking
able
on
to
her. I'm just saying
no,
in general.
no.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm just saying, like, even for me as someone who's voting in the next couple of
Yeah.
days, because we are, and again, this will have posted after voting. Please have voted.
I already mailed in my ballot a couple weeks ago. I'm ahead of the game.
Yes, okay. I'm actually I'm gonna be driving in to Atlanta to vote, so that's gonna be fun.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna like drive in and then race back to get to work. It's ridiculous, but
Like I'm gonna pull
neither
up at
here
the
nor there.
polls on you.
Look, come see me. I'm over here. But yeah, but oh crap, I lost my train of
I'm
thought. But what
sorry.
I will say is, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I honestly do have to do a little bit more research over these next couple of days,
Hmm.
to just make sure that whomever I decide to put my vote with, that I feel comfortable with the decision I made. Because honestly, I
Hmm.
feel like it's an election where you're picking the lesser of two evils.
Very that.
And I think we all know which is the lesser of two evils, but then again, we
Very
don't
that.
know which is the lesser of two
Well, we
evils.
know
Because
who's a politician and we know who's a tyrant. I'll say that.
and we know that if one person is reelected,
Hmm.
that there might not be another election. We could easily
Listen,
become, because our country is
gonna be
so
another
screwed up.
Roosevelt.
We could eat look.
Even though
But
they
the thing
liked
about it is
Roosevelt
that they
though.
like Roosevelt. I'm gonna say they liked Roosevelt.
But he the reason
Roosevelt
why
was
they got these 2 terms. Like,
why
all
they
right,
got
now get
these
on
two
out of
terms.
office now. You're doing a lot.
I don't know. I look forward to the time when we have a presidential candidate that I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Again, I just look forward to that election. I think it personally, on the topic of voting, it just excites me to be more active in my
Hmm.
local government. And because we've said this before, but like that's where you're going to see change. Like if you really want to have a hand, because if you look at things like the 94 crime bill, and I mean, perfect connector right there, that had to start small. It had to start small.
Yep.
And for it to have gotten to the size that it did, 356 pages, and we're talking billions of dollars of investment, like we let that skate right past us.
Yep.
And then affect us directly.
Yep. Because
we were so excited to see Tia and Tamara Mowry on TV. Because we were so happy to see the birth of Will Smith.
We were so happy about the Bulls.
Come on now, because we really focused more on TV and media in the form of visual media, but entertainment, when you broke down like music, what was going on there, and sports, what was going on there, and film, like we didn't even talk about Poetic Justice and Juice and Boys in the Hood, like we didn't even touch those guys, like, but there were so many crazy things that made us feel like we were seen.
Yeah. Can I actually touch on the whole basketball thing really quickly? Because I do want to bring something up. So for people who saw the documentary about the Bulls and all of that, even the way that the NBA used Jordan as like the black face, and he had to be perfect. He couldn't do this. He couldn't do that. And then if you look at somebody who came in like Iverson, and they literally like demonized his character and made him like this thug because he had braids and he had tattoos and he had cars. Like, oh, he's not a good representative. But then you had somebody like Jordan who had this clean image, and it was very important to them to keep his image as squeaky as possible. And it's like, for a black person to have to be so perfect, like we got to make sure that we don't do nothing that they don't. They even enforced a dress code because they didn't like the way Iverson dressed, to the point where they told the players, okay, everybody got to come dressed in suits.
Wow, in suits. Like, so legit. He's the reason for the
He's
suits.
Literally the reason. Because before Iverson came in, like players didn't have tattoos that were visible. It wasn't something that they did. And a lot of the older players criticized him for that because they wanted to look clean and presentable for who. You know what I'm saying? Because once you see the tattoos and stuff, now you a thug, now you this and you that. You know what I'm saying?
So I'm not the biggest sports person, but like, how did they not have that same reaction to like Dennis Rodman? Because he was before Iverson, right?
They did have that reaction to Dennis Rodman.
Okay.
So but see, the thing with Dennis Rodman was like, Dennis Rodman got into like partying and all that stuff like that. So they scrutinized him. He started out, before he was on the Bulls, a lot of his like issues that he had on teams and stuff was because they were trying to suppress who he was. It wasn't until he got on the Bulls where with his coach, where they was like, okay, with Phil Jackson, he was like, I'll give you the space to be you. And when they gave him that space to be himself, he was a better player. He was on time for practice. He was more focused. So he actually went through that until he got to the Bulls with a coach who was willing to allow him to
work with him.
Be him. You know what I mean? But he went through that too. He definitely went through that. Because they had a lot of issues with him like acting out, but it was because he was suppressing who he was. And then once he did start to do that and express himself, the media tore him apart.
Tore him up.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they
tore him to shreds.
Snatched him. Yeah, true. Just
but if somebody else do it, they're just like it's pop or it's rock, it's cool, it's
they're
edgy.
So edgy,
right?
They're
but
so
we
edgy.
do it, we're some thugs. Okay.
Hoodlums, hooligans. Now, okay, so I did actually learn something in my research that I thought was very interesting, and I wanted to share with you and see if you knew this.
Okay.
So, and then I'm actually going to come back to Jordan because I have something I want to ask you a question about Jordan also.
Okay.
But okay, with the Different World, because I'm a big Different World fan, and A Different World, I want to say, came out at the end of the 90s, or the mid 90s. Yeah. Did you know that show is originally supposed to be about the white girl?
No, I did not.
She was supposed to be the lead, and it was originally supposed to be about the white girl's experience at a HBCU. And that was Bill Cosby's idea.
Ooh, Bill girl.
That's what I said.
Keep them in there.
Right. I was like, what? But they took it back to the drawing board and they convinced him to make it different. And it was supposed to be about Lisa Bonet. They had to convince him?
Well,
look,
I'll be.
Well, what can I say? But like they convinced him, and Lisa Bonet took the lead until her whole situation, which then it became the Dwayne and Whitley show.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh goodness. Okay. So
you just gagged me with that really one. I did not know that. I did not know that.
Okay, another one. I got another one. So one more thing. Living Single. Mm-hmm. So for those of you who don't know, Living Single is the mother of Friends.
Oh yeah, I knew that.
But this is what was interesting that I learned about Living Single is when they originally wrote that show, the production company, they were trying to get them to not to drop Max's character because they did not want an unapologetic, dark-skinned, loud Black woman.
Wow.
Exactly. But they fought for her character.
So Regine was okay. A light-skinned, outspoken woman was okay, but she can't be dark-skinned.
But they did not want this loud.
She can't be dark-skinned. That's way too far.
Like unapologetic.
She was a lawyer too.
Loud.
They don't need that.
And she was a lawyer.
They don't need it. Wow.
I mean, and that was another show that I love. I love Living Single. I think it was just awesome that they show Black women as professionals because that was one of the first shows to do that, and that really kind of birthed Girlfriends and Insecure and shows like that. But I just think that was a good show. That was a really good show.
And I do want to point out too, in shows like Living Single and Martin, there were a lot of references to HBCUs. Like they would make sure they had they wore a lot of those sweatshirts and stuff like that. On Martin, they brought a lot of Black entertainers and really showcased a lot of different things. They talked about a lot of different subjects on both of those shows. And what I loved about Living Single was that none of those, all of those women, you could relate to them, but they weren't stereotypes. You know what I mean? Their characters were so dynamic. Sinclair is not an everyday Black girl. That's not a stereotypical, you know what I mean? I love her too. But that's not, you know what I mean? But you can relate. Everybody knows somebody like that. And I feel like a lot of their characters, even though those were all Black women, their dynamic of their characters and the dynamic of their friendship could cross any boundary. You know what I mean? Anybody could relate to that because they was really just homies kicking it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Homegirls. Yes. Everybody got homegirls.
And I even think that's part of the reason, the relatability. That's why I loved A Different World so much because I didn't watch A Different World a whole ton when I was younger. But when I got older, and I think it was on Netflix or something, and I was either in college or I had just graduated, and I binged the whole thing 3 times in a row. It was ridiculous. But I binged the whole show, and I was like, wow, to have, because they were pretty similar in the formula of making sure that they had a lot of special guest stars who were Black entertainers. You had Patti LaBelle coming back in a recurring role, and Tupac was there. Shamar Moore was there. Not Shamar Moore. Michael Ealy. I don't know why I got those two mixed up. But Michael Ealy was there, and then my favorite actress, one of them, is Jennifer Lewis.
Yes,
I love me some Jennifer Lewis, and she was Dean Dorothy Dandridge Davenport. I love her so much. She's amazing. But yeah, I mean, I just think. Oh, and now, are we finished with that part of? Because I actually have a question I want to ask you. It's a hot one. I hope brace yourself. Okay. Because I feel like I know your answer on this, but I want to see. So, you were talking earlier about Michael Jordan and his experience with, there were so many rules for how he had to, kind of conduct himself. Do you believe that because of his the required tokenism that the position he was put in as kind of like the token of the NBA, that might be a part of the reason why he invests so heavily in the private prison sector and private prison system.
I have a few things to say about that. And let me first say, because when it comes to like the game of basketball, I'm a big fan of Michael Jordan, but I always had an issue growing up even with the fact that he never really spoke out and spoke up for Black people. That was literally the thing that, because I got the shoes. I ain't gonna sit here in front. I love sneakers, so I do own Jordans. I'm not gonna sit here in front. Yes,
you are a sneakerhead. Yes,
I love
absolutely.
Basketball. I'm from Milwaukee. I grew up in a Bulls household, so I'm not gonna sit here in front like on that tip when it comes to like the sports and stuff. But when it comes to what he was doing off the court, I just really did not respect the fact that not only is your biggest clientele your people, and not only are you Black, but you do not feel the need to say anything, to speak up at all for your people. And in the documentary, he did, kind of talk about that. And he was saying like he didn't say anything because he didn't want to say the wrong thing. And he didn't feel like that was what he was meant to do and all of this. And he just wanted to be an example and blah, blah, blah. But I just feel like that was like a whack excuse. Now, I will say, when everything kicked off during the pandemic, he finally spoke and he addressed it. And it was, and I gave him, his mercy and his forgiveness on that, because I feel like because he got so much flack, I think he learned his lesson. Because a lot of people had an issue with the fact that people used to always say like Jordan don't care about Black people. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? That was like a thing about him not caring about his own people. And so I will give him the credit to speaking out and using his voice currently now. But I will say I wasn't feeling it. I feel like a lot of it was just him trying to save face and to continue to be the king. You just wanted to keep, you know what I mean? So I definitely agree with like, you were just trying to save face and you was trying to keep yourself straight. And I just think that's really whack. Really whack. But I will say he did speak out, when all the stuff, George Floyd and all that happened.
I'll give him his credit for that, because I kind of looked at Jordan how I look at Tiger Woods.
Lord.
Right. That's what I do. That was it right there. That was it right there. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, it just.
But my favorite player, let's be clear. Let me just be very clear. My favorite, everybody that knows me knows my favorite player of all time has been Allen Iverson. Always will be. You know what I'm saying? Revenge for AI. They did him wrong. You know what I'm saying? They did him wrong. They really did. The league really messed him over because of his image and because he was just a Black man. That's all he was. He was like every Black guy we know. How many of your homeboys you know that when they get some money, they gonna go get a car, you know what I'm saying, get a couple tattoos,
get something nice for themselves.
The braids ain't the thing no more, but everybody got dreads now. Like, he was just a Black guy. That's all he was. And he literally would always say all he wanted to do, I just want to play basketball. That's it. Just let me play basketball. But they wanted to be so wrapped up in what he was doing in his personal life, or what he looked like, because he looked like clean enough for them. He wasn't polished enough for them, because we got to be so polished,
Isn't it crazy that now you look at the NBA and it's completely different?
But literally, crazy? Iverson was the one that changed, like, the reason why they did the
pioneered
dress code.
That, yeah. Like, I remember that being a big thing, yeah.
Yeah, dudes started to copy him. Like, because he was coming there with like sweats and stuff. They started to emulate him and copy his style. He was really into and he was the first basketball player to really be in the mix of hip hop like that. And they started to emulate that. He literally was a trendsetter in the game, and they penalized him for it and really played with his career for that. You know what I'm saying? Whereas
Which, I
if
mean,
he
they're
had
good
been
for.
prim and polished, because he was one of the best. Even Jordan has said like he was one of the best people he's ever played against, one of the fastest point guards he's ever played against. And if he would have been polished and prim, you know, like Jordan, he probably would have gotten that same treatment that Jordan got.
Had a different experience. Yeah, that's crazy. That's
Very bad.
crazy because
I got on the
they'll
soapbox,
snatch.
but I love Iverson.
No, it's okay. They'll
They did him
snatch
so
your career in
wrong.
a heartbeat. They'll
Yes.
do it in a heartbeat. I mean,
Yes.
like, we still have examples of that happening to this day. I mean, Colin
Absolutely.
Kaepernick's another example. There's so many of our people that if you're anything other than what they want you to be, or Monique, what they expect you to be, Snoop, you're gone. Like, that was it. Nice run.
Monique is a touchy one, though.
Monique is a touchy one, and we're gonna have to save that for another. That's a whole hot loaded combo.
It is, because it's like a.
It is. You know, like, it really
like, I want to be with you, girl, but girl. But we're gonna say that for another day, though.
We're gonna save her. Can
we talk about just like media, because you did touch on that a little bit. Like,
yes, go ahead.
So also we have to keep in mind that the positive, there were a lot of Black images being shown. A lot of, you know, commercials started to utilize Black people, television, hip hop music. Like, they started to use our music in advertisements, but they were using us to target us. You know what I'm saying? You look at like McDonald's. They got basketball players doing McDonald's commercials. You play basketball. How many Big Macs and Sprites is you busting down, really? Like, right. And they use things like they advertise for us for like cars, fast food, shoes, you know, stuff like that they know is just to get the Black dollar, because they need the Black dollar. You know what I'm saying? You look
they can't survive
Tommy Hilfiger. I remember Tommy Hilfiger. Now
please say it. Please let the people know, because I don't wear Tommy for this reason. Please say it.
Now, the funny thing about the whole Tommy Hilfiger Oprah thing, about Tommy Hilfiger not wanting or making his clothes for Black people,
for us,
whatever the case may be, but we being the ones putting him on. Now, Tommy claimed he was misquoted. I don't know how true that is, but that's what he has said. He has said that's not, you know, what I was saying. They misquoted me. Whatever the case may be, Tommy Hilfiger and a lot of other brands that hip hop artists, be clear, made popular, because hip hop really, really took off in the 90s with gangster rap and all of that. They made a lot of these brands popular, but people, and it's so crazy to me now how people are always so shocked when they see these brands do racist things, and it's like, sweetie, they never meant to do that for us. But then you look at brands like FUBU that died. You know what I'm saying? You go to City Trends to get all the Black clothes. You can't go to high end, you know what I mean? All our stuff go to City Trends, and everybody clowns City Trends. You know what I'm saying?
Now, I think I will say,
what happened to the apple bottom jeans?
I think FUBU is having a revival. I think they're finally having a revival. If I'm not mistaken, their prices are back up. So if I'm not mistaken, FUBU is having a revival. But yeah, I don't know what apple bottom died.
You know, like Fat Farm was the thing.
Baby Fat is still. I think Baby Fat. They say she's still rocking.
She came back with Forever 21 and tried it with them prices. Girl, we not paying.
And we know what happened to Forever 21. I mean, right.
But it's like it's so crazy, because, and even how it's something that, like, you look at people like Wayne, who over there thumbs up and with your boy and stuff like that. But it's like, we are continuously being used. And it's like, I don't know if people just don't, like, they really just blind and ignorant to it, or is it like, and it kind of goes back to the whole Black representatives in office. It's like, are we just pandering to keep our position, to keep our coin, to keep this little dollar? And it comes down, like, what's the price on being Black? Like, What's the price on your life? You know what I'm saying? How much are you worth?
Yeah.
How much is your people worth to you? You know what I mean? And then it's like, if you're going to do that to get these positions, at least use your money and give back. At least
Come on
uplift
now.
your people. But you
At
get up
least.
there and then now you above it all. You know, you got people talking about, oh, that doesn't affect me. That don't apply to me. You got people like Wayne and ASAP Rocky thinking that they not that don't apply to them. But it's like, you're still black to them. I bet you
You're
if you
still
get
black.
pulled and ASAP Rocky learned that the hard way. You still black, baby. You're talented.
At the end of the day.
You're rich, but babe, you're still black.
At the end of the
Sorry.
day.
And you dark skinned. Sorry, hate to break it to you. They don't care.
They're gonna demonize you real quick. I can tell you from experience.
And if they can find a way to get you, sweetie, they're gonna get you and they're gonna leave you there. And if you get caught up, they're not gonna save you. They're going to leave you there.
That's it.
You will be on your own. Okay. Rose is gonna be laying on the plank while you're paddling and dying in the cold water.
Right, and we all know
my boy in the water like that.
We all know there was room on that for both of them. Rose knows she could have scooted her big head to the phone over.
Like she could have like switched out. Over. Like, let's alternate, or let me paddle for a little bit and then you
like
rest.
why did Jack not say, Rose, move over? You know I can feel it. Ain't gotta be no goodbye.
Right.
But they just had to be all dramatic.
That still upsets me to this day.
Yeah. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I'm sorry. It's a movie. Look, that's your fault.
Was that the 90s?
I think it was. That was epic, first of all.
It was a lot of hours.
Like, we played the soundtrack to that when I was in like maybe 10th or 11th grade. That was like one of our instrumental band like concert pieces. And it was good.
It is.
Like now when I go back and listen, we did that and we did Forrest Gump. Now when I go back and watch those movies, like I can't not watch the movie and not hear because they both have amazing like soundtracks. Like it's really good stuff.
Can we talk about how racist Bubba was in Forrest Gump? It was so racist. It was so racist.
Must we? Oh, because there were there were so many things to come out in the 90s that I don't, oh my gosh. Because I even think about the fact that blaxploitation was huge in the 70s. But if you go back and look at even just some of the films that we had come out in the 90s, because was Baps in the 90s?
Yeah.
That was so racist.
I ain't gonna lie, though. I love Baps.
I love Baps too. And I'm like, that is because I was so seeing them with them long curled nails and that big old hair. And I'm just like, that's Halle Berry. That's Academy Award winning actress Halle.
And let's talk about that. First of all, the fact that she's the first Black actress. It took how long? How many Black actresses were there? Before she did Monsters Ball. And let's be clear, she did Losing Isaiah before she did Monsters Ball. And you want to see an Academy performance? Watch Losing Isaiah. Okay. Even from the very beginning, where she in there rocking, stealing chips at the gas station, singing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's in the case when she was trying to learn how to read, and she was snot bubbling in her nose, reading about the cats drinking milk. Okay. Academy.
She's a phenomenal actress, and that's the film she won for. And if you even look at the history of just the racism of the Academy, all of them,
Denzel.
all of the academies,
he had to be training day to get his.
Denzel.
And there's still so many of them
who still haven't. There's so many of them who still haven't gotten like their flowers. But I look back at Hattie McDaniel. She was the first.
Sit in the.
Couldn't even come in the room.
This upsets me.
It makes me so angry because, first of all, she took that role and she murdered it. She was like, what? And then after that, I want to say after that, she was like, I'm never playing another maid again. But she stopped playing maids after that. But the fact that For Gone with the Wind have been one of the most classic, iconic American films that discusses the antebellum period. It just blows my mind that even at that time, y'all voted her to win.
And told her she couldn't sit up there with y'all, though.
And then have the nerve to tell her, oh, yeah, but you can't come in the room. Like, you can come out when they announce you and receive your award, but then you got to go back out.
And I don't know if you've seen Hollywood on Netflix.
Yes,
but
I was gonna ask. I love Hollywood.
Yes, because I loved that scene that they did where she was like, "No, you go out there because I couldn't. You go sit in the front because I couldn't."
Mm-hmm. I
You know
love
what I'm
that.
saying? Love that
And
moment.
even them just breaking down her backstory a little bit more. I think there's so much that people don't know about Hattie McDaniel.
Yes.
And I liked Hollywood.
Yes.
Of course, it follows that Ryan Murphy formula. You know, just like Nurse Ratched, it's a formula.
I was watching Ratched today.
Look, it works for him though.
It does.
It works for him. It works for him. Oh my gosh, I was gonna say something else about we were talking about the 90s movies, because there was another one that just that popped in my head, and I was like, how did this film get made? There's so many. I mean, you look back and you just realize, because I think we could even spend a whole episode, and I should be writing these ideas down, but I think we could spend a whole episode even just talking about the films, the songs, the albums, the projects that have been put out that couldn't be made today.
Yeah.
Like that would not make it to the big screen or to the radio today.
Now, Tyra's still on her apology tour. She's still out here apologizing.
I mean, everybody's still coming.
That quarantine got her good. People say, "Oh, we got time to watch." Oh, they was like, "Oh, wait a minute, this ain't the favorite show I used to love."
Today,
because we grown now. Everybody's grown now, though. Like when we were watching that, we were kids. That was like the early 2000s. It was what, like 2000, 2002 or something like that.
And I'm gonna tell you where they messed up. When COVID happened and everybody had access to go back and watch the old seasons, everybody's like, "Oh, I'm so excited to watch America's Next Top
And they was like, "Oh
my god!" And you just be like, I mean, and you start seeing it in the first couple of episodes.
They had blackface. They did blackface.
Like, that episode, and they did it in multiple seasons where they had girls doing different races.
And I watched one of her little, like, quote unquote apologies, and she swears her apologies ain't even really apologies. So
I honestly don't really like hearing her talk that much, so I haven't listened to any of her apologies.
Her apologies are basically a whole lot of, I was a pioneer and I did this and
that's why I don't like listening to her.
Yeah.
The same reason I don't like listening to Naomi Campbell. They talk so much about themselves. I'm like, sis, you're supposed to be apologizing. Are you apologizing to yourself? Like, what is this? Like, but I mean, yes, we're gonna have to break. Yes, go ahead.
Can we talk a little bit also about hip hop? And
sure.
I just want, because I know like 90s hip hop gets a very bad rep because of the language that is used. And as a woman, I will recognize some of the language and some of the, imagery was very problematic. Very true. But let's be very clear. A lot of the rap that came out in the 90s was them just talking about their environment. Anybody who grew up in an impoverished neighborhood, I grew up below the poverty line myself. They were speaking about what was happening in our communities to our people. And let's be very clear. The reason why people don't want to hear it is because it's hard to hear and it's a lot to take in. So imagine living it. Right. Imagine having to be in that environment where people are getting killed, people are on drugs, where you got to sell drugs to make money, where you got to choose between being on the street and being in school because you ain't got no money at home. Like, this is what was happening. And let's be clear. We did not create that environment for ourselves. We did not put ourselves in that environment intentionally. We were placed there on purpose. We were put that way on purpose. And when people started to speak about it, now all of a sudden we got to censor. We going to sue these rappers. We going to take them to court because of we don't like what they're saying. They can't say these things. And it's like, so we can't say it, but y'all can do it. Oh, okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. Now I see the game we're playing. Oh, okay. Like,
and it really boils down to the fact that it makes them uncomfortable to see the product of what they've done. Yeah. Like, it's got to make them so uncomfortable to see that we've turned the crap that they've given us into a pie and served it to them fresh.
Yep.
Come on now, Minnie. Like, come on now. I mean, because I completely agree with you. Like, 90s hip hop is so demonized. And yeah, there's absolutely some problematic word choice and even some themes in certain songs by certain artists. There were certain things that, you know, we could have possibly done without, you know, but they still helped set the stage to change music.
And it was still a reflection of our environment.
It was still a reflection of, exactly. But you know what's crazy to me is that 90s hip hop is demonized, but then you go back and you look at like 90s rock and 90s grunge. And they were on something different. Like,
man, dude in the song literally says, "Sometimes I feel like dying." Like, he literally said,
yeah, I mean, like, that's some really dark music.
It's very dark. Not gonna lie, some of it I listened to, but
no, absolutely.
It's because I was in a dark place, so you know I can relate.
But it absolutely, and I think it's, again, it shows you the disparity, like how anything that we birth, or because it's as we are, anything that we birth is going to either be demonized, villainized, or it's going to face a ton of oppression to have any form of success.
And they're going to try to silence you.
And they're going to try to silence it. And if they can't completely silence it, they're going to steal it and put their name on it and their label on it and take it as their own.
And they're going to say, next
which they've
thing,
done so many times.
First, I'm the realist. That's what they're going to do with it. Direct shots. Now, taking direct shots. I don't care. Yes. Direct shots. Because, girl, what's your Australia accent when you rapping? Where it's at? Why you sound like you came from Memphis?
An unpopular opinion. I have an unpopular opinion that's going to get me in trouble. And I'm okay with the trouble that it's going to get me in. It's okay. I'll read you brought up, say it. Look, you brought up Iggy, and I'm bringing up Adele. I love Adele. Okay. I'm a big Adele fan. But Blue Eyed Soul, what is that supposed to be? What?
Listen,
Blue Eyed Soul?
Because we can rope Sam in too, because I love Sam. We can rope Sam in.
Come on
too.
Now. I was going to call him, but
people want to talk about R&B is dead. R&B only died because other people took it, called it pop, and ran off with it. That's the only reason why it's quote unquote dead. It ain't dead. It's just stolen. It's whitewashed. To be very clear, because
we're revolutionizing it again.
Exactly. You got people who is singing them same songs. So you got somebody like Luke James. Why is Luke James not as big as Sam Smith? Is what I need to know.
Why is Jasmine Sullivan not as big as Adele?
It's what I need to know.
Exactly. I completely agree.
Granted, Luke James is doing his thing in the acting world, but why wasn't his music as big as Sam Smith? Because he was opening up a Beyonce.
He was.
Okay,
hasn't he written for her?
I believe so.
I believe he's written for her.
Music and his vocals, to me, no shade, but he can sing better than Sam Smith. Let's be very clear on that.
There's no shade, there's no trees, there's no forest. It's a fact. Like, there's no.
It's very bad. And Adele, girl. Now, girl, I'm all here for you and your weight loss. Love your vocals. Cute songs. Love it. Setting fire to the rain and all that. But girl, you tried it with that Jamaican outfit on, boo. You tried me. Not here for it. Nobody else may not call you on it. I'ma call it.
Let them know.
That ain't it. Don't do that no more.
She's like, I'm at Carnival.
You can do Carnival different, sweetie. No, that's not it.
No, you're in the wrong clothes.
I know you could have found a better outfit. I know you could have.
Yeah.
I know you can afford it. You didn't have to.
Absolutely.
She tried it.
She could absolutely afford it. That's crazy. Yes.
I got to bring up one more person that I actually really like her. Katy Perry. Now, Katy Perry is good for bringing these rappers on these songs now.
She is.
And tipping on to the top of the charts, honey.
California Girls.
Miley Cyrus. Tipping on to the top of them charts. Listen, with Mike Will and them. Tipping on to the top of the charts. Made it. She can twerk and do all that. Hey, that's okay. She can do it. That's okay.
Maybe she shouldn't.
We'll put her on the award show. It's fine if she does it, but we can't. Don't let us dare. Don't let us dare.
We can never. These are facts.
And these are people
you're absolutely right.
I like their music. I'm not, you know what I'm saying? I'm actually a fan of Katy Perry's music. I do. I loved her first album.
I like Katy, yeah.
Yeah, she put out some really great music and very empowering music as well. But facts are facts.
But what I will say, and I'm not trying to make Miley seem any less or more crazy than she already is. The fact that she's really getting back to her kind of country roots.
And don't get me wrong, I love Miley. I'm a Miley Cyrus fan. I love Miley Cyrus music.
I'm glad that she's finally taking the direction back.
She's going back to the hippie route. Loving
that. She didn't go further and deeper and die. Like I'm glad she didn't take a submarine dive.
She didn't reeled it on back in. I need you to go back to singing with Dolly, babe.
Yeah, well, she's rocking a mullet and she's doing this whole 80s sleek Madonna kind of thing. It's working for her. It's working for her. Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm just glad it's not like dreads.
But we didn't need it. We didn't need it.
Oh my gosh. One last thing I did want to say about media before we bring this conversation to a close is there are two things I want to inform our 5011 fam about in case you did not know. So this is a new little thing I want to start sprinkling it in case you did not know. There is no such thing as black on black crime.
Hello.
There is no such thing as black on black crime. There is only crime committed against people that live around you. Exactly. So black on black crime is because it's in black communities. That's what black on black crime is. It's white on white crime if it's in a white community. People commit crime against their neighbors.
It's crime. It's just good old crime.
It's just good old crime. So it's just crime.
Exactly.
And the second thing is, if you did not know, now you know that BET, VH1, MTV, CBS, Comedy Central, CMT, all of those are owned by Viacom. It is important for you guys to understand that because Viacom is the entity that has a huge part in controlling our image.
Very that.
And they put out a ton of media.
Very that.
Either
which started in the 50s too.
Started way back. Oh, we're getting good at it. We got some episodes lined up for y'all. Y'all already heard some sneak peeks in this one because it's gonna be hot. But it's just important. I think I just felt really led to make sure that we did not sign off without letting you guys know about Viacom and about black on black crime.
Yes.
So for one of our favorite segments every week, for the culture, you got a black business to shout out this week, D?
Actually do. And this one is a very, I don't even know how I found this. I was glad I found it though. So the black-owned business that I am shouting out is called Claire Paint, Clare Paint. The founder is a black woman, Nicole Gibbons, and basically Claire Paint, and she was a former interior designer who was on like HGTV and Oprah's network and all of that. So you know she know what she's doing. But the difference with them is, so they have designer curated colors. So they curate their own colors, and they have mess-free swatches. So their swatches are peel and stick. So you order the swatches, you peel them off, stick them on your wall. That way you can see, because paint, the color changes from night to day. So you can see throughout the day how the color will be on your wall without having to paint your wall and mess up your wall. You don't have to sift through the little flaky swatches, the little paint and flicking off. And also they have Claire Color Genius. So they have it's integrated to help you pick the colors if you're having trouble picking colors for your room or for your home. And it's 0 VOC, which means it's toxic free. No toxins.
Love that.
None of the carbon coming out and killing you. You don't have to worry about that.
Right.
And Green Guard Gold certified, which means it meets the emission standards. So it is safe, it's healthy, it's good for your home, and it's super easy to use because they're peel and stick swatches, design curated, get custom colors, bomb.com. So that's www.claire.com, and you can also follow them on Instagram at Claire Paint, Clare Paint. Boom.
Yes. Love that. Claire Paints. That's www.clare.com. You could totally get into the infomercial business because all those ands were everything. You're like, and we got this, and we got that. I loved it. That was everything. No, absolutely. Right. So this week for the culture black business shout out, I'm gonna shout out one of my homies. This dude has been there. He's a good confidant. He is a phenomenal artist. He actually designed the logo for my business that you guys will probably be seeing sometime soon.
Coming soon.
And his name is Braxton Barker, and the name of his business is Artwear Style. So that's Artwear Style, all together, ARTWEARSTYLE. You can find him on Instagram, you can find him on Facebook. And what Braxton, he got his degree in fine arts. He's a painter, he's a graphic designer, he does phenomenal work. He's also in the military. So that's something cool for those of you who want to support a Black business and a Black military man.
Veteran.
And he's right. Well, he's active. He's active.
Oh, okay.
So he's still, he's in there. Like he's
okay.
Yeah.
They say
I'm actually waiting for him to get back. Right. Be safe. Yes. I talked to him a couple weeks ago, but he specializes in custom clothing. So he will take your denim jackets that you want to repurpose, your jeans you want to repurpose, and he will help you come up with a complete look and a creative style that'll be a one-of-a-kind art piece. And that's why it's called Artwear Style. So you actually wear the art that you get to create. And so he, I helped to train him as a stylist, so I feel proud on that end.
Yes,
and we worked.
Do it.
Yes, got to throw that in there. But we work together a ton. He's a great guy, and it's a great business. And I'm just excited to see what else he's got coming forth. So we got Artwear Style tonight, and we've also got Claire Paints. Guys, check out those businesses. And I just want to say, Dee, I love you.
Oh, I love you too, babe.
It has been awesome having this chat. I always love having this chat. And just talking and going through our topics. And before we get out for this podcast, I did want to share something with our 5011 fam. And I know this is taking you completely off guard because I didn't tell you I was going to do it. Right? I didn't tell you I was going to do it. But no, it's something you already know. But I've decided, I had a conversation today with one of my mentees, and he really just kind of checked me. It's a young man I'm really proud of, and he's grown a ton over the past year, but we were just having a conversation about, the future and plans and things like that. And in part of that conversation, he was just telling me how much he loved me and how much he really wanted me to live as my truest self and feel comfortable being free as who I am. And I thought this would be a great opportunity to open up and share with our 5011 fam. So guys, I just wanted to come out to you all and just let you know that I identify as queer. I hope not. But I think it's important to have that as you guys know that I identify as a queer Black man, because it does influence my opinion. It does influence how I've been perceived and, my experiences throughout life. And so, full disclosure, I didn't want anyone just speculating and guessing and wondering. And it's not that it's something that I'm super secretive about, but I just wanted that to be out there and to let you guys know, for those of you who need someone to look up to or need support or need someone who can believe in you, who can speak life into you, I'm here. And, I need that life spoken into me too. So just wanted to share that with our 5011 fam. And, I knew I could do that here with you. You're part of my safe space, Dee, so you make it easy. And I just wanted to send some love to everybody and just say, thank you guys for supporting us and following us along on this journey.
I didn't know you were going to do that. I started tearing up a little bit.
Oh my goodness,
and I'm a thug, but I started tearing up a little bit because I love you. And I'm protective of you.
You are.
But I'm happy you felt comfortable to do that very much.
Of course.
Very much so.
So guys, again, thank you all for tuning in for another episode with us this week. We love you. If you haven't heard it yet, you're hearing it now. Someone loves you. Yes. Someone's looking forward to seeing you next week. Yes. And we'll see you guys again here at the 5011 Chronicles Podcast. Much love. See y'all next week.